Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be talking about the last set of chapters for Exile, chapters 21 through the end. And then we will be going ahead and transitioning from this one to the third book, which I believe is Sojourn. I'm pretty sure it's Sojourn. Sojourn. I should have written it down to make sure I was right, but I'm pretty sure that's it. But at the end, when we do our transition, we'll go ahead and talk about the titles and everything. So we'll go ahead and get started, of course, at first with our recap. If you end up enjoying this discussion, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and a subscribe. I would love to have you join our community and help it grow bigger and to have fantasy conversations with you. All right, let's get going. So, our recap for this last set of our chapters here starts with Matron Malice being very excited that she has finally found Drizzt. She is super happy that her hard work is finally paying off, or so she thinks. Drizzt and his friends have escaped the Mind Flayers and from Zak, and they kind of discuss the interaction that he had with Zak after they escape. But unfortunately, though Clacker looked like he was getting better for that one brief moment, he is actually becoming more and more into fully a hook horror, and has been on the edge of becoming fully a hook horror. Drizzt decides that he is going to risk having them go back to his home to try and save his friend by getting him to Mesobaranzan and finding a wizard that can then help break the curse on Clacker. So they decided that they're going to go back, and they start heading back towards them. Malice goes in the meantime to see Matron Boehner, and tries to make sure that she continues to have a secure position despite the fact that she is taking such a toll from the Zincarla, and ends up going home with 200 people in House Boehner's army. So she thinks that she is now secure and that no one else will attack her and that she can finish up her Zincarla in peace. Zak ends up catching up to Drizzt and his friends over the acid pit that they passed a long time ago. And that is where they have their fight. They are battling it out, and Zak is really struggling against Matron Malice because he loves Drizzt, and he is got enough of himself in there that he is trying to fight against having to kill his own son. And though the struggle is really hard for him, he eventually breaks free enough to just run himself off into the acid and make it so Zincarla fails completely. And Drizzt loses Zak all over again. When Malice fails, Briza is there immediately to kill her and try and take over the house. But right when this happens, House Boehner attacks the House of Do'Urden, and Briza is now a matron of a very overwhelmed house. And Drizzt, in the end, as we finish up this book, decides that he wants to make a living, or change altogether from being in the Underdark to living above on the surface. And he's decided that that is where he's going to try and make his life now, because his house will never stop hunting him down. So very, very interesting. We do wrap up the part with Zincarla that's been going on throughout this whole book at this point, and it seems like we've made some major changes at the end of this particular novel. So we've got another new fresh start coming for us in the next book. Okay, so the first thing for this discussion that I want to talk about is House Do'Urden. So House Do'Urden has been the constant between these two books, and it is Drizzt's family. So Malice has finally seen her downfall, and that's huge because Malice is like a huge part of book 1 and now the huge adversary for book 2. But now she is dead and gone. So we now have a huge opposition to Drizzt that is now gone. Not saying that Drizzt doesn't have enemies still, obviously he does. The goddess Lolth is wanting his head on a platter. However, the main direct adversary that he had was his mother, and the control of his mother, and his mother hunting him down. So right now, we've got a huge thing going on with the fact that House Do'Urden no longer has malice at all. Not only that, but the house has been completely broken. House Boehner has overrun them, has, at least it seems like it's likely that they will have wiped everybody out and that they will no longer be a house anymore. House Do'Urden is gone. At least that's what we think. We'll see when we get to the next book if that is the case, but at this point, the house is broken down. Have any of Drizzt's sisters survived? We don't know. There's a potential that 2 of them might survive, also potential that they haven't. We just don't know yet. We do know that Dinan, though, has survived, and he has been recruited by Juralaxl's group, so we'll see where that goes. But definitely, everybody else is probably just done for. They don't have a weapons master anymore either, so they don't even have anybody who can take point and be a main leading force. So really, over the course of this book, we've really seen the plunge in power that House Do'Urden has had. They've really been crumbling because of the whole Zincarla with Drizzt. So they're now at their weakest point. Zincarla failed, and boom, House Boehner overruns it because Lolth is now like, you're out. You failed, and you're out. So definitely really interesting to see how the fall of this house has been slowly crumbling and crumbling and crumbling to where now it's been ground into the ground. Ground into the ground. That's really eloquent, Amy. Really eloquent. It's now been demolished, is what I'm trying to say. So, what did you guys think? Did you expect for this house to already be over? I mean, it kind of seemed like that was going to be a thing until the end of the trilogy, at least. You know, that was going to be something that happened when we finished the series, kind of, since it's only a trilogy. But nope, we are now having it done early. At least we're going to find out how that changes things moving forward. But I think it's also interesting because Drizzt doesn't know about his family's fate. He has no clue, and he's making decisions based on assuming that they are still alive and not that they're gone. As well as then it's a major change in the story because it's like, who is going to now be the opposition? Now what is going to be propelling the Underdark to be against Drizzt? Or is it going to be completely new? Is it going to be a problem on the surface? Is it going to be totally breaking free? Because, I mean, Lolth is not going to be not wanting Drizzt. I mean, that's obviously going to be still a thing. And I don't think just going to the surface is going to have her let him go. So what will be the next thing to come? What will be the next adversary? It'll be interesting to see what happens from here now that the foundation of the series so far with House Do'Urden has now crumbled into dust. Next, let's go ahead and talk about Zak and Drizzt. So obviously this ending is about the final goodbye between Zak and Drizzt, especially with the conflict that's going on that they are in about how, you know, Drizzt is not going to be killed by his dad, but then also this fact that he gets a final moment or so with his dad before it is a final death for forever. Zak's spirit is still truly intact in his body. Once they bring back the body and reanimate it, the spirit comes with that. But he's just being overrun with, you know, malices, evil and hatred and mind control. So it's hard for Zak's spirit to express himself and to continue to be himself but he is still in there, and he is still who he always has been. So even though he's locked away, he is truly himself, and it is basically that he is brought back from the dead in many ways. His love for his son is so deep that malice cannot actually override it and make him kill Drizzt, which is, I wouldn't say like super surprising. I mean, obviously we kind of figured that there was these moments where he kind of came back to himself, but it just shows how strong those feelings are and how much he truly, truly loves his son. That was what pulls him away from Malice and makes it so she cannot, control him. Though I do think it's interesting that before he almost kills him, like literally would have killed him if it wasn't for Clacker. And he didn't come back to himself. But then at this final moment, when it matters, he does. Drizzt really attacks with emotional attacking versus physical attacking. And that is what brings him back fully to himself, enough for him to sacrifice himself or his body so that way he doesn't hurt Drizzt anymore. So Drizzt, of course, is super, super depressed about the fact that he lost his dad yet again, when he was hoping that he could maybe have his dad back. But I did like the point that Zak said that he's at peace in death, especially since considering, he's under Lolth's domain. I'm actually very surprised that is the case, that he becomes at peace, because I don't know how peaceful you can be being under Lolth's domain, even in the afterlife. But that is something that's super, super great to hear, is that at least out of all this darkness and all this pain, and the fact that he has the pain of losing his dad, he at least knows that his dad is at peace, and that his dad recognizes Drizzt's accomplishments. He even mentions how proud he is that he left Mesobaranzan and struck out on his own and tried to make a better life, one that was not filled with hatred and murder. So, and at least he got to have some more closure. I mean, before he didn't even get to see his dad for the last time and know that he was going to be gone. So at least this time now he was able to truly say goodbye and to truly know that his dad loved him and was proud of him before he's gone for good. So I did really like this interaction. I do feel like this was really important for Drizzt as a character. I think that it really helped to have this little bit of closure for that part of his life. So even though a lot of this was bad for Drizzt, it did have that kernel of good and a little bit of that kernel of something that was meant to happen for him, something that could have some benefits instead of just being something horrible and bad. Though it is sad that Zak had to then be controlled that whole time, but he did get to show Drizzt how much he loved him and to show him that he was proud of him. So I do think that at least Drizzt can hold on to that in the future. Okay, next let's go ahead and do this transition, because even though we've kind of like wrapped some things up in the end of this one, I think it'd be really interesting for us to fully kind of dissect the covers as we usually do, the titles, and just kind of see where we're at when we're heading into book 3 here. So I'm not as prepared as I thought I was when starting filming today, because my iPad is not charged enough to do the displaying of the covers like I wanted to. So I'll just flash them up on the screen for a little bit for you to go ahead and take a look at what I am talking about. I'm going to use my phone. I just don't think that it'll be easy to show you on the phone. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll be great. Maybe you'll see everything I'm talking about. But I feel like the screen is much smaller on the phone, so it might just be easier to just put the cover up on screen when I go ahead and talk about it. Okay, so first, let's go ahead and talk about the title and how that affected or represented this book too. Exile was the title of this book, and Homeland really had a good, solid meaning toward the book 1. Now, book 2 here for Exile also seems to have a very spot on meaning for the book, because he is basically in exile from Mesobaranzan. It is an exile that he has put upon himself, but it is still an exile nonetheless. So I do really appreciate how, even if you don't totally understand at the beginning why the title might be what it is, we do at the end see exactly what that title was trying to portray for the story. So I really, really like that title. I think it is fitting. It's simple. I kind of like that it's just the one word. It's not like a phrase or a sentence like some books can get. So I really do appreciate that. Now let's see. The next one is called Sojourn, I think is how you say it. Sojourn. Sojourn. And to be honest, I'm not 100% sure what sojourn means. Let me look it up. Sojourn. A temporary stay. Interesting. Okay. So the next one is called Sojourn, which means a temporary stay. Obviously, he's, we got this ending here that's having him going up to the surface. So maybe it's trying to portray it's only a temporary stay at the surface. That could be potentially what the next book is about, or trying to say it's going to be about, is that he's going to go to the surface and then come back down. It'll be interesting to know, but if we're following along with book 1 and book 2, Sojourn is going to easily portray something about the plot in the next one. So that is maybe what it's going to be. Maybe it's a temporary stay, meaning he comes back down, and that's a temporary stay, is that he comes back and then finds himself permanently on the surface. It's going to be hard to say until we read, but I do think that it is interesting that he's making this new journey up to the surface, and the next title is only a temporary stay. It is not a permanent stay, or like the title of New Home or something. So keep that in mind as we move forward. We'll see where that sojourn takes us. Now let's transition back to our second book here, book Exile, and let's go ahead and dissect this cover, because we have some interesting things to go over. We did talk about it at the end of book 1, about what this could be showing us or depicting, and like book 1, it does seem to be a moment in time from this book that we're looking at. So if we're looking at this particular cover, I do like the green. I like how each of the covers are separate color scheme. We have Drizzt here with his swords, and we see in the background him leaping away from what looks to be mind flayers, just because this is the same description as the mind flayers with their tentacles and stuff like that. And it does look like we're deep underground in a cave of some kind or whatever. So this looks pretty accurate to portraying him being captured and escaping from the mind flayers. Sadly, we don't see any of his friends on the cover here. That would have been interesting to have that. But I do like how we've got a little snippet from book 1 on the cover, and then we have a little snippet now of book 2 on the cover. So super interesting. Again, like the green, I like the light and the dark contrasts, and I like how we can kind of see that that's like it's not the main event. I mean, the ending climax is with Zak, but it is a pretty big event that happens in this particular novel. So I can see why they would choose it for the cover. Interesting. Okay. Let's go back to Sojourn and see if we can kind of guess what the cover might be depicting. And this one I feel like is actually kind of easy. So Sojourn is showing Drizzt and Gwen coming up to the surface. It's pretty obvious that that is the case, because we've got the trees outside, it's a cave opening, and they are walking into the light. And this is the first cover that we have that has a brightness to it. We've got the brightness, we've got a little bit of the darkness because they have the Underdark below them. The first two were very dark in color and in theme, with just the hints of the highlights with the lighter color. But now we've actually got a ray of sunshine and we can see that light is shining through. So it does seem like we're setting ourselves up to be on the surface. For how long of this book? Tough to say. It does say the title is Sojourn, which makes it sound like maybe not that long, but it'll be interesting to find out. So, what are your thoughts on the two covers? What are your thoughts on the two titles? I'd love to hear what you think about this transitioning and what we're gleaning from the covers. Another thing that I want to kind of talk about in our transition is we've got this life at home for the first book. And then we've got the life of, like, the transition of being out in the Underdark and leaving Mesobransn. Now we are leaving the Underdark. We are now going on a new journey. Each of these books we have sectioned off to being, okay, end of this part of his life, now we're going to be living in this new place. Now end of this part of his life, and now we're going to be living in a new place. So what do you think about these distinct life changes that we are going with each different book? We're seeing a little snippet of that portion of his life. So this will now be a new portion. This is now a new start, a fresh start once again, and we will see what that fresh start, how that happens, what comes of it, and how we will progress from there. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this new start. Also, he's no longer going to be with friends anymore. So once again, he is starting with nothing. We are starting with no friends, no nothing. Just like when he went into the Underdark, he had no friends other than Gwen, and he built those friends that he had throughout this book. And now he's off again alone with just Gwen at his side, and he's starting something new, fresh, and alone, which is really actually sad. I was very sad that he left Belwar at home and didn't have him with him. I feel like that was pretty sad. Even though it made sense and it was what was best for both of them, it still was pretty sad for me. So I really liked Belwar a lot, and I will be sad that he is not going to be in the next book. At least it's if he's going to be on the surface. He's not going to be in the next book. So probably not as much for sure. So what do you think is coming next? Malice is dead. House Do'Urden is crumbling and attacked. And not even sure if anybody will still remain from House Do'Urden. He's going to start life on the surface. How is that going to go? What do you think is going to happen? What do you predict? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? I'd just really like to know what you think might be coming next in this new transition between Book 2 and Book 3. Now, last but not least, what is our nitty gritty for this book? I kind of already mentioned my first thing is that I was really sad that his friends are now gone. Clacker was the worst part of this book, as he tried so hard to be strong and to fight the Hakora part of him. They were going to try and get him some help, and he dies. I mean, I know that he's at peace now and that he was very much miserable and hating himself and just worried that he was, going to be lost forever. I totally understand how in many ways Clacker had a better fate than what he was having when he was alive. But still, I wanted him to be saved. And Belwar being left behind is so sad. Belwar being Dritz's very best friend, Drizzt being Belwar's very best friend, to have lost that and to be breaking them apart just really, really made me feel very sad and feel very bad for both of them, especially after all they've been through together. It's pretty devastating, honestly. I was really, really sad, and I wonder, were you guys sad as well for this, or did it seem right to you for it to all kind of not work out. I mean, it does seem like it is very fitting for the kind of stories these are, but still. I do think it is interesting to think about how Drizzt's decision on this is based on the fact that his mom would always chase him and always send somebody after him. So I do wonder if he would choose to still go to the surface if he knew that Matron Malice was dead, as well as the fact that his house is pretty much gone and destroyed. I would be super interested in if you think Drizzt would still make the same choice that he's making at the end of this book if he knew what we know. Also, when a house attacks another house, if any of the royalty or higher nobility of the house is alive, technically that could count as the fact that then the attacking house could be in trouble for attacking. So I do wonder if Drizzt counts in that, because I don't really feel like Lolth would count that. But does it count still? I think that would be an interesting question. Is if Drizzt came back to Mesmeranza and be like, hey, I'm Do'Urden, where's my house? And then was able to lay blame on House Boehner. That's an interesting thought. At least for me it is. Though I don't know why he would go back there or why he would care. But it is an interesting thought to keep in mind. Also, I just have the question of what life will be like now for Drizzt if he does go to the surface. What will happen? Will he be able to adapt? How will he make his fresh start? I mean, obviously he has the survival instincts to survive. But how will he be treated? What will be his welcome? It'll be interesting to know exactly how things turn out from here. Okay, that is all I have for today on Exile. Thank you so much for discussing this book with me. I hope you are still enjoying our discussions and are excited to move to book 3. I would, of course, love to hear your thoughts and opinions about this book, everything we read before, all your thoughts for the next book. Just be happy to have a conversation with you about it. Now, before we go ahead and close out for today, let's go ahead and go over the trivia question. And this past question is, what culture's myths are Gorgons from? So I have several correct answers. It is Greek mythology or Greek culture that has the Gorgons. Nice job to Penny, Dan, Paul, Tassela42, and Crypt with the I as a 1. And yes, so all of you guys got the correct answer. Thank you so much to everybody who participated. I really appreciate seeing all your answers and your best guesses. And I will go ahead and get that next new question up for you for us to play another round. If you would like to join in on the trivia question, head over to the blog fantasyfictionfanatics.net. It'll be over there on the right-hand side. You'll just have to scroll down a little bit on any of the pages, and it'll be there on desktop. On mobile, you'll have to scroll almost all the way down to the bottom, but you will find it there to be able to answer. Also, while you're over on the blog, it'd be great if you checked out the other content I have there. I've got reviews, I've got recommendations, I've got different topics that I just discuss what I like and what I don't like about fantasy or other elements of reading and fantasy. So if you want to check out more content from me, go ahead and browse around on there, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings about any of my blog posts on there. If you would like to get a hold of me, and down below is not the best place, that's perfectly fine. You can check me out on social media. I am on Facebook, which is /fantasyfiction1. I am on Twitter, which is @fantasyfiction1. And I do have an Instagram as well where I post things, and you can follow me there and get a hold of me, which is also @fantasyfiction1. So go ahead and check out any of those places if you'd like to get a hold of me, or if you would like to get new updates on content, go ahead and check that out and you can get updates there. Also, the best place, in my opinion, to go is the Fantasy Fiction Fanatics Discord. I will leave the link down below for you in order to go ahead and join. We've got lots of people over there already talking, hanging out about fantasy and non-fantasy related things. You can direct message me there. get updates on content there, as well as talk to your fellows in the community. So we would be happy to have you join and would love to talk all things fantasy with you. All right, I guess that's it from me today, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.